I really like that machine. As you see, there's no travel in the rear suspension whatsoever.
Sort of a Bosozoku style, the radically lowered Japanese scooter.
One thing I wanted to note and talk about is that Peter has called this thing his Bosozoku scooter. Is it a Honda CBX 400F with a 3-tier seat and a giant front fairing? No. So in that sense, is it Bosozoku? No, it's not. But you know what? He's lowered it. He's taken inspiration from those guys overseas that have done incredible stuff, and with the tools he has at home and the bike he has in front of him, he's done as much as he can to make it the way he likes it. And you know what? That's more than a lot of people can say. A lot of people aren't modifying their own bikes and doing fun things with them. And to see Peter doing this and having fun, I think that gives him eligibility to call this thing whatever they want. Technically, the true term for something like this is Kentsuki, I think. Kentsuki. And that's the name for a modified scooter. Just like Bosozoku isn't a car, it's a term to describe the motorcycles. The cars are Kaido racers. But I don't really care for terms. It's not a big deal for me. Moped, scooter, motorbike, small motorbike, I don't care. I'll call this thing all of those. And I'm happy, and I'm riding them, and I'm having a good time, and I really think that's all that matters.
Further to that, I would like to add that once upon a time, I made a Suzuki FA50 into a Bosozoku scooter. I got a really cool seat made by Kaz, and it was really awesome. And look what happened. We got on a Japanese website. So here we are, which is IQ Japan. Now, it's one of the main Bosozoku magazines that was produced throughout the years. And look, that's me with my Bosozoku scooter right there. And here's some information about me, all in Japanese, and my friends and us riding around. And they also go and quote the famous Vice Japan video. They acknowledge, if we go through to the English version, that it's not Bosozoku, and it doesn't really matter. So they say regulations are becoming stricter in Japan and the culture of Bosozoku is becoming less common. However, overseas the recognition is rising more than in the heyday. Now, he said, meanwhile, I received a photo from overseas, New Zealand. That was me. I sent it to Takeshi Saito, and he said the photo shows a motorcycle with a 3-tiered seat. No way there is a runaway tribe in New Zealand. This time I would like to introduce the profile of the leader who posted the photo. And there we go. He talks about me. And they say, the back of the homemade 3-tiered seat, certainly the same as the Japanese runaway tribe. While incorporating Japanese runaway culture, it does not copy perfectly. It's the style of the New Zealand runaway tribe that also values its own motorcycle culture, which is 100% true. We're just taking what they do, adapting with it, and having fun. And I think that if you want to judge someone for having some fun and you're sitting there from a point of or a place of judgment, then you just really need to reassess why you're looking at that and why does that matter to you so much.
And I've done a sort of, you might say, an old person's version. It's very plain. It's got a set of TGB ergon front forks, which are significantly lower but the right diameter, and the back's been turned into a hardtail to get the whole thing down into the weeds. But again, it's one of just a toy, just something to have a bit of fun on.
Boom, TGB World, here we go. Let's take over the world. It's a Taiwan Golden Bee. These two models here both have a large amount of history for me. This thing here was the top dog when I was at high school. If you had one of these, you were the coolest kid around. These things here with the fat tires and kind of the big stance and style compared to the small Dios and Suzukis and stuff that we'd been used to. It was quite an impressive little thing, and we didn't care where it was made or where it came from. But in saying that, Taiwanese scooters are actually really good quality, unbeknown to me back then. This thing has been sacked out. It's been dropped a large amount of millimeters in the rear, probably about 70 mils, and the front forks are from a different TGB model called the Ergon, and the Ergon sits a little bit lower. So as you can see, you've got 10-inch wheels front and rear, but they've got a really massive profile, probably 130/90 or 120/90/10, and then the same on the front. This thing here is the TGB Delivery. You can see there's a little bit of difference as far as wheel sizes go. So the front's got a 14 and the rear's got a 12-inch tyre. Now the reason for this is because it's got that massive box on the back, and that is for delivery purposes. Another thing I want to point out first of all is that the headlights are entirely different. You've got the bug eye set up here, and you've got kind of a more, I'd say, modern, sleek design, but it actually kind of looks a bit dated in this day and age. The TGB Delivery has a side stand on both sides. There's one there and there's one here as well, and and there's also highway pegs. The speedometer setup on the TGB Delivery has a left counter which goes up to 80 kilometers per hour. You've got your high and low and your indicators and your horn. You've also got your high and low beam indicated light, your turn signal light, and your oil indication light, and your fuel gauge as well. Front disc brakes, so you've got your level in sight there on the master cylinder for the front disc, and you've got your three-way kill switch, off, on, off. Electric start must be operated with a brake in. Now this thing here is another button. Why is this button here? Well, this button is here because this thing is here. Now if we need the key, don't we? Okay, there we go. How good is that? You can fit your whole head inside here. This thing here is designed to have a hot box or a hot plate in here, and then you can stack them up, and then you've got a pizza delivery vehicle. And these are used by Domino's Pizza in New Zealand, and the amount of room they have in here is just super impressive. If you look underneath, they've got suspension on both sides. So you've got suspension on the right on a little subframe there, and you've got suspension on the left side, which a lot of these little scooters only have single-sided suspension, so it is very, very interesting. Got extra lights on the back here as well, and if we close it, you've got your key, and then you also got your rubber hatches or stays here that kind of help make sure this thing is closed. We'll actually open under the seat first. So the Delivery does have your fuel tank here, which is kind of just sitting in where the helmet storage is on these ones, but the fuel tank isn't able to be at the back, so it's here. So yeah, remove this front little plastic part here, and there's an oil tank for the injection system. Awesome. Alright, and now this one, we'll see some differences. Well, first of all, the rear just has a rack. That's all you've got. You do have a similar twin tail light set up here, and you've got the rear fender, and as you see, there is no suspension on the right hand side of this one. So twin shock versus single shock. And we get the key open here, you'll see there's a massive amount of room, which is where the fuel tank was on the other one over there, which I find quite interesting. Just a little caution label here, and that's about it. You've got your fuel there, your tank's in the back instead of under the seat, and your oil's in the front, batteries under the floor. Let's just see how the difference of riding goes with these. Electric start. You notice I have to use the brake. If I turn it off and try to use the electric start without any brake, nothing happens. So brake on, kill switch needs to be in the right place, and electric start, and we're good to go. You've got your horn, your indicators, which do have a clicker, or your turn signals, and your high and low, which is from these little machines down here, the bug eye headlight, and they're quite zippy. Let's get out of here. Now, looks like this thing, will just keep accelerating and going and going and going, but they do have a CDI limit, so we'll be hitting that shortly. And I have hit it now, and I can hear it going, no, but you can't really hear it through the microphone, unless you can, in which case you know what I'm talking about. Feels like if you lean this over quite a way, it kind of starts rubbing in certain places, which would make sense, and that's because it has been lowered so much, so the tyre will deform and shape differently when you're leaning right over, and that obviously is starting to rub. There is no suspension. Oh, it's quite hard. Oh gosh, if I talk normally while I'm going over this, it kind of gives you some kind of indication as to what the bumps are actually like. It's quite intense, but there doesn't seem to be an issue with ground clearance. I'm riding this Bosozoku machine and I am absolutely chuffed. It's very, very, very fun, and it zips along. TGB 101S. It's time to see what this thing looks like while it's rolling. He's spinning it. I really, really, really like that machine. As you see, there is no travel in the rear suspension whatsoever. It does look really good. It looks so good while it's rolling. I really like this machine. It's bottoming out. Get out of there. TGB gang. If you don't love a TGB 101S, what do you love? Wow, okay. So, one thing I would like to show you is if I put the side stand down, it stops. And there's nothing, it won't start. So, there you go. Side stand down, side stand up, brake on, electric start fine. You've got your kill switch there. So, off, on, off. Same as many other bikes that exist. Your indicators with the same clicker, high and low beam, and your horn. Now this little button here is to make sure your warmer in the back for your pizza is good to go. And as you see, I've got my highway pegs. The reason this thing has highway pegs is for one reason only. If you've got a giant box here, because it's a delivery vehicle, you can still put your feet out and comfortably ride without having nowhere to store them. And I think that's awesome. Super comfortable. On the back, with the backrest, I'm just very, very chuffed. It's quite fun. Oh, this backrest is just something else. I mean, yeah, it's a little bit bumpy, but I'm having the time of my life. And I'm doing it all in comfort. Now I need to go very slowly over the stuff here. And I don't know if you can tell by the jiggle test, which translates through to the way my voice sounds. I think the suspension's a whole lot better on this thing. Well, I know the suspension is a whole lot better because it's got some, and the other one is hardtail in the rear. But I think this is good fun. There should be a race series with these things. Oh, wow. This backrest is just something else. People might think it's old, and you're old if you have a backrest, but woo! Just hit some gravel. It's good fun. It makes total sense. Now, as you can see, this one does have rear suspension. It's got 2 shocks on the rear, in fact, and they come in wildly handy. You've got 2 extra tail lights, you've got 2 extra foot pegs up the front for highway pegs, and I think this thing is just well designed, well thought out. It's made specifically for delivering food. It's got a larger wheel than this thing does on the rear, and then it's got an even larger one on the front. So we've got a 12-inch rear and a 14-inch front. Really, really impressed by that machine. How great. See if this thing can handle a bit of off-road. Yeah, it's doing much better than this one was. You can see the rear suspension working overtime, and that larger wheel on the front and the larger wheel on the rear just give it that bit of oomph it needs to be off the ground a bit further, give you a bit more ground clearance, a bit more of a comfortable ride. They're awesome machines.